How did you get here?
I started modeling, and so I was with the Kathy Muller agency, and next thing you know, I'm like all over the place. Liberty House, Polynesian catalog guy, all that kind of stuff. Started my own advertising agency in 1995.
If you started off in kind of the business route, what's the big piece that got you to doing yoga?
I remember in 2007, I need to bring this modality back to Hawaii, this tool.
Which part of you needs to be whole?
I spent a lot of time on that.
Could you share one of the times that it was tough for you?
I'm in a place where we're active people, and all of a sudden she doesn't want to do anything.
If you could only remember one thing from it, or what story would you bring back with you?
There's an unknown force that is out there that I don't want to define it, call it whatever it is, but it exists.
I want to know what your heart and gut is responding on this one.
I suppose what it comes down to is just...
Greater Good Radio, connect, learn, heal, and grow, is brought to you by Brain Gain Hawaii, a boutique executive recruiting, career development, and coaching firm. Learn more at braingainhi.com. Today's guest is Eric Rosso, one of the co-owners of Yoga Room Hawaii, and we're going to talk about the new chapter or new season in his life and
evolution
career.
Of life. Yeah, for sure.
So welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you.
Thanks for that breathwork class also this last weekend. That thing was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit before, and you're trying to remember how we met. We met on the first time that we had Greater Good Radio. We were launching it because you ran an ad agency.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Not many moons ago, but I'm phasing out of the ad agency. I've been doing it for now 28 years, and it's been a wonderful career. But, started Yoga Room back during the pandemic when the whole island was shut down. We opened up the Yoga Room with 5 other partners. I have 5 partners, including me. And now we have 700 members, and it's thriving. It's a hot yoga studio in Kaimuki, and doing the breath work. And it seems that my impact for my life going forward is to heal Hawaii, or do what I can to bring healing to Hawaii. I think that's the best way to put it, is that's where I'm going to have the biggest impact.
Maybe if we kind of just take a couple steps back then, like how did you get here to Hawaii?
I went to Brown University. I graduated from Brown with a chemistry degree, worked for a Fortune 500 company for about 2 years, and said, this is definitely not what I want to do. I was living in the East Coast. I grew up in Boston, played football at Brown, just graduated, and all of a sudden just saying, this is something more. So I quit the job, and I got a one-way ticket to Paris, traveled all the way through Europe and Southeast Asia, came to Hawaii, and never left. And when I was here, I started modeling. And so I was with the Kathy Muller agency, and next thing you know, I'm like all over the place. Liberty House, Polynesian catalog guy, all that kind of stuff. So I got used to being in front of the camera. And then I got my real estate license, did that for a few years, and then went over to Channel 2, for KHON TV2, where I started selling air instead of land. And then started my own advertising agency in 1995. And 28 years later, kind of phasing that out. So
if you started off in kind of the business route, what's the big piece that got you to doing yoga and then opening like a yoga studio?
So, I played football. So I was always involved in athletics. And I remember in 2007, I was at the Honolulu Club and just started doing cycle classes. And next, one of the managers, who actually I saw yesterday in my yoga class, and I thanked her and I shared this, that, nobody is self-made. There's always people along the way that help you out. And she said, hey, you should think about teaching spin classes. You're really good. I got certified, and next I'm teaching spin classes at the Honolulu Club. Then Core Power came along in 2012, and I started going there, and it was just wonderful. But before that, at the Honolulu Club, they had some kind of a promotion or program where they said they check your strength, they check your cardio, they check your flexibility. And then they came back and they said, hey, Eric, your strength is great. Your flexibility, it sucks. Your cardio is good, but you need to work on your flexibility. And next I'm starting to work on my flexibility. What am I going to do? So I took a Bikram class, okay, what they call...
How old were you at this time?
So this is 2007 that I started teaching cycle classes, but it wasn't until 2008 that I started to start taking yoga classes. And I went to Bikram, and it was hot yoga, and I just fell in love. I tried the yoga, in other, cool rooms and things like that, and it just didn't do it for me. It was the hot yoga that I said, okay, there's...
So you get more flexible or something? Because I haven't done that before.
Yeah, so after this program, they said, hey, Eric, your strength is great, your cardio is good, but your flexibility is really bad. So I just said, okay, got to work on that.
But in the Bikram, in that hot yoga, like what's the difference between doing it in that hot room versus like, just doing it? In a hot room, you can tell that your muscles get more flexible. You can stretch a little bit more. And there's something about when you come out of any yoga class, okay? What I didn't know at the time was the breathing that yoga provides. If you're breathing the yoga breath, you can heat up the body. And I can do any yoga anywhere today and get a great workout. I'm going to be sweating afterwards. The hot yoga, there's another element to that. And it's a great feeling when you're done. But yes, you can become more flexible in a heated environment. So you went from Bikram yoga, and then you're like, I love this.
So I went to Bikram yoga, and I was doing the Bikram yoga at Yoga Room at the time, with the previous owner. And
so it's the same name as before?
It is the same. Well, she had 3 names before, and she ended up, when she came up with Yoga Room Hawaii, we just kept it. I thought it was a good name, so we all just kept it, and we just, rebranded it. So in 2012, Core Power came to Hawaii, and I started taking Core Power yoga, which had sculpt with weights. And I thought it was like, oh, this is a game changer. This is great. And of course, it's picked up, and it's a very popular thing. And I started there. Next, I'm teaching sculpt, and then I'm taking my 200-hour teacher training all through Core Power. I'm teaching vinyasa classes, and just this transition to yoga. And then I'm going to different workshops throughout the country and learning more about yoga. That's my path right now.
So like for somebody who doesn't really know about yoga stuff, like what's the difference? Like vinyasa, what was the other one you said?
First of all, yoga comes from India, and it's been around for the last 3,000 years. So the asana, the movement of yoga, basically is done before you go into meditation.
Oh.
So you get all that energy out so you can sit for hours and hours and hours. Going into the Western culture, the asana practice is now the mainstream. Okay, you don't see a lot of people doing a lot of meditation, which they should. And we can talk about that a little bit too. But the yoga that we're doing right now, there's so much more to it. For example, let me just give you a quick example. Let's just say you're running. When things start to get intense, you quicken your breath. You're breathing in and out through your mouth usually, or in through your nose and out of your mouth. So things start to get intense, go a little bit faster. You run faster, and your breath quickens. In yoga, when things start to get intense, what you should be doing in yoga breath, you're breathing in and out through your nose all the time. Your breath slows down. And there's something happens in that breathing where the lens starts to go inward. And you get kind of a euphoric feeling at the end of yoga. A lot of people, it's the same thing as when people are running and they get that runner's high. They're in that flow state. And something happens in that flow state, and you go inward. And that, I think, to me, is where the value of yoga is. Sure, you're going to get more flexible. You're going to build strength in areas. You're going to find more. You're going to get more balance. So physically, there's something really good about yoga that is different than running, lifting weights, and things like that. And especially as you get older, I always say that your muscles are like rubber bands that have been sitting in the sun too long. They get brittle, and you need to use them. You need to continue to work on that flexibility. But to me, is what happens with the mind, the clarity of the mind, the cohesive wholeness that we all want to try to become, just to be whole.
I think the main question and what I'm kind of digging for is like, I did a yoga class in Seattle, probably around 2014, and I would go, I think it was a warm kind of room. I liked it, but then I haven't gotten around to doing it here. I mean, I'm 50. My flexibility is not good compared to what it used to be, right?
And I get that a lot. People always say, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible.
Well, it wasn't even that. I mean, I remember the first time I went by Core Power, and I was like, okay, I'm going to check this out. Yeah. And I went in there, and what I saw, like, just before the class happened was, like, a whole bunch of, like, hard body, like, beautiful looking people in, like, beautiful looking outfits. I was like, dude, I'm not going to be in there. Seriously. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be the only, like, fat plug in that room, like, dying when everyone's, like, looking sculpted out of a picture. And I think that was the, you know, the inner part of me was like, oh, hell no. So that's what kind of held me back at that time. But now, you know, I realize I need to get... I think that's kind of the quandary in my head.
So let me address that. At the yoga room, you know, we have the Bikram format, which we don't call it Bikram anymore. We call it 26 and 2. Oh. What's interesting is when we first started, I would say that almost 90% of the people in the room that were taking that 26 and 2 class were 35 and older. And if you come into one of our classes today and take a 26 and 2 class, you will probably find that half of them are over 35 and half of them are under 35. And the people that are under 35 never even knew this format was called Bikram. And Bikram's, I mean, the poses, if you ever watch the documentary, they never really hit on the poses. They weren't saying negative things about it. It's a great series. So I would recommend that you come in and just give it a shot. But if you come to our studio, what I'm saying is there's going to be a lot of age demographics. You know, you're going to have older people and you have younger people. You have mom and daughters and dads and sons in the classes. It's definitely more skewed to women, no question. Because, you know what, you know, Hawaii or yoga in the United States has geared towards women for some reason. If you go back to the 1920s in India, only men could actually do yoga. And then gradually women started to come into the practice. But in the Western culture, I think men seems to like, oh, that's more of a female type of thing, is stretch, you know, expression.
Kind of like the perception on hula almost, right?
Kind of, yeah. And it's one of those things, I think if yoga was invented in the United States, it would just be called extreme stretching. But there's a lot more than just stretching physically that you're going to get out of yoga. But if you come to the yoga room, we're going to have yin classes, you know, classes where it's very slow, like you're holding poses for like 5 minutes, and it's an hour class. And it's
Is it hard to hold those poses for 5 minutes?
Well, it is. I mean, if you haven't done it, but you know, it's one of those things, it starts to go into the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, and people need that. You know, we're living in a society where there's so much stress, and I hope that we can talk about that a little bit too. But again, once you go to the yoga room, yeah, you're going to see a lot of fit people, but you're also going to see people that are just like you and I, are just average Joes, and we're just doing yoga.
Oh, you and I are not average Joe. Like, you are not the average Joe. I mean, I may be, but come on. Like, yeah. I always describe, I said, oh, this is my friend Eric. He reminds me of spiritual Patrick Swayze. And they're like, really? And I put the pictures together. So right. Isn't this like spiritual Patrick Swayze?
Interesting.
Huh?
Yeah, thank you.
You never been called that?
I have, actually.
Spiritual Patrick Swayze?
Well, not spiritual, but someone said, like, oh, you remind me of Patrick Swayze. And I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah. Okay, here's what I'm kind of interested in, too, is that when you mentioned that it's targeted, or I don't know if it's just more popular amongst women, right? Like, what is the value that the women are getting out of it that keep them coming back? What is it?
It is changing. Yeah. Okay. And, you know, I really believe that Core Power did a great thing by bringing in Sculpt. Sculpt is yoga with weights. It's really not yoga, but it's cardio with yoga influences.
Like an exercise, more exercising.
Yeah, I think
yoga.
the owners at Core Power saw that the yogis started losing a lot of muscle mass on their upper body, so they brought into the weights. And you know, and Sculpt or yoga with weights has been going on for years in other different places with different names, but it just caught the name Sculpt yoga with weights. And you're getting a lot of athletes coming in and checking it out. And I was that person. Okay. I was like this jock. Okay. I'm spin class. And then all of a sudden I'm doing this yoga with weights, and I go, this is great. Then all of a sudden I'm in this yoga studio and I said, oh, what's this vinyasa class? What is this class? What is this class? And next thing you know, I'm doing all of this yoga stuff. And then I'm learning a little bit more. And why am I feeling so wonderful after this yoga class? And like all of a sudden it's just curiosity, and you keep diving in and diving in. And there are new chapters and new chapters and new chapters that come out.
Maybe in more of kind of like that spiritual aspect of it. Like what are you getting out of it when you're in their spiritual aspect from your yoga practice?
You know, again, there's evolutions. So at first it was just this wonderful feeling that I had afterwards. And I just feel so good. And it's totally different than going into the gym and just working out or going after a run. There's something that was just different. And then as time goes on, I used to get these just clarity, you know, in terms of what should I do? Okay. If I kind of like threw all the nuts and bolts of this problem that I have, whether it's work, whether it's in my relationships, whether it's in anything, and I go into a yoga class by Shavasana, all of these images are coming. And I'm able to find that clarity. I was a creative in the ad agency. Used to take all the elements, throw it in my head and say, I got to go take a yoga class. And then in Shavasana, I would come up with the script. I said, I got it. So something about that, I understand it now much better of why, because you're in another state. You're in another brainwave activity when you do this yoga. When you get into this flow state, you're not in beta waves anymore, which is what we're doing right now. You're more into this daydreaming alpha waves or theta waves. And that is where there's creativity. And that's the only time that you can find that creativity is when you're in a place where you're safe and you're feeling that, oh, okay, this is great. Mm-hmm. And that's what yoga provides.
So that's why I wore this shirt for you today. This is actually, my daughter designed this.
Oh, wow.
Piece, right?
That's great.
Yeah, so my daughter and I are doing we're about to, like a father-daughter kind of podcast based on, purely on like connecting with your parent and child and so on.
She had a great experience on Sunday as well at the Breathwork.
So maybe if we want to transition into that, like how do you move in from the yoga to the breathwork? What's the deal with breathwork? Because it's kind of a all-encompassing term.
So again, it's trying to understand what's happening into this body. If my journey is to try to find wholeness, there's a lot of ways to find that wholeness outside of just yoga. Yoga is a tool. So, and my definition of a tool is a tool can change your state in real time that gives you opportunity to make changes. And so I'm on this journey, and I'm going to continue on this journey because I love this journey, because there's so much to this yoga, meditation, trying to find this cohesive wholeness. And that's my journey. So I went to Costa Rica and I did plant medicine. It was an ayahuasca retreat. It was a 7-day retreat. 4 nights was ayahuasca. 3 nights was breathwork.
4 nights in a row?
4 nights in a row. And
then the last 3 were breathwork?
No, the first night was breathwork. The last 2 nights, when it's all done, we do breathwork. Mm. So let me back up. What was the reason why I was going there? Again, not only in my journey, but my wife passed away in 2012. And, you know, she died. She had 9 years of cancer. And there's a lot of stuff that came up. And at her passing, everything was great. We all came together and, you know, she passed. But at the same time, I wanted to go back and meet with her as I'm learning and I'm on this journey. I want to talk to her. And one of the reasons why I did ayahuasca is to go talk to her, to go see her again. And I did. And she definitely came to me, but she came the most in breathwork. So when I did this breathwork down in Costa Rica, this certain type of breathwork. Now, breathwork is very similar to yoga. There's a lot of different types of yoga. There's Kundalini yoga, there's Hatha yoga, there's Vinyasa yoga, there's 26-2, Bikram yoga, all these different types. Breathwork is the same way. There's so many different types of breathwork, and they all work just like all the yogas work. It's a matter of finding a practice that you're comfortable with. So I did this type of breathwork down in Costa Rica, and I just had the most cathartic experience. And the thing is, Steph came to me, and she's there, and I'm having a conversation with her. And it was the most beautiful thing. And you know, when you're a little kid and you're crying so hard that you can't even breathe, I was doing that.
And what did she say to you?
It wasn't more about what conversed between the two. It was what we both felt, and this feeling of we're okay. And, you know, images of us doing things when she was alive and healthy that showed our love. And I think that was everything. Okay. The conversations that I had with her, they were okay, but like it was really about the fact that we were just together and everything was wonderful. So that was the purpose. And when I had that experience with the breath work, I'm going, Eric owns a yoga studio. I can do this back in Hawaii. I need to bring this modality back to Hawaii, this tool. And I did. And I've been doing breath work for over 2 years, once a month. And I started with 8 people in the room because no one has any idea what's going on in this breathwork class. A lot of people come to it saying, am I going to get better at yoga doing it? It does have something to do with yoga because it is a form of meditation, but it's meditation on steroids. But the beautiful thing is that it's here. I did get certified by a guy named John Paul Crimi. He did something similar, a similar type of breath work that was down in Costa Rica, but I still follow what they do in Costa Rica. And if you haven't done it, the only thing I can say is give it a shot. Breath work will have the ability to make you sleep better. So one of the guys that came on Sunday texted me and saying he has an aura ring. Have you ever heard about those sleep things? He goes, I had a full night, 8 hours of sleep and never woke up. That has never happened to me. So I get these all the time of what breathwork has done. I've had a girl, Belinda, she said, Eric, I suffer from self-love. And this is in front of the whole crowd. I suffer from self-love. So in my breathwork journey, I meet my younger self and we go free diving and together, and we're just having the most wonderful time. And then we come back and we both meet our older self. And our older self looks at us and says, you guys are going to be fine. So to me, I look at that as you are healing you. You know, we always look for external things to help us internally. But when your internal can heal your internal, that is the most powerful, in my opinion. And that's what breathwork is going to do. You can have these cathartic experiences and bring clarity to some of the things, some of the problems that you have in your life. And that's wonderful. And the stories are endless. So that's Belinda's story. I had one girl, and when she goes to her therapist wants to ask her about a trigger. She can't talk about it. She can't disassociate. When she was doing breathwork, she was able to dissociate, and she was able to talk to her younger self and say, this doesn't define you. Breathe through this. You're going to be fine. And to this day, from what she was saying, she can actually talk to her therapist about this now because she went through this experience. So I'm like going, oh my God, this is, huge movement forward and changing of the chapters that now she can actually walk forward and talk about this thing. And hopefully, again, find this cohesive wholeness that we need to all walk through because we all have problems. And if we can find some clarity in that and move forward and be whole, that's wonderful.
The way you're describing it is similar to a psychedelic experience.
No question. And without the
psychedelic, and then you don't have all it's not as long.
I always say, I'm not making this up. I've been to every one of these things, and what I hear and what people hear, that share at the end usually gets long. People love to talk. And the last one, not a lot of people talked, and maybe it was because it was such a big room. There was over 65 people in the room, but I have the headphones, as you know, and that gives you the ability. It's a game changer to go inward and not hear someone else scream and all that kind of stuff. So it does help. But when you hear what people talk about and you know that there's change going on, and the amount of emails that I get or the texts that I get through social media after an event like that, and people are going, "Oh my God, someone just came in, names have been changed to protect the innocent, but someone just said, I had a hard time, I was struggling, and then all of a sudden she kind of broke through, and then she said, I heard the word, I love you, and I've never said that to myself. She said, I've never said I love you. And I just, after that, everything just kind of like just went peaceful. It was like floating in the air, and I was drifting, and it was wonderful. And when you can walk away and you can feel that way, and again, that's the whole idea of this cohesive wholeness. My analogy sometimes is everybody's going through stuff. Remember the Etch-a-Sketch when you were younger? Mm-hmm. You whatever you created, if you don't like what it is, you shake it up and you got a blank canvas. And breathwork is kind of like the same thing, where there's all this stuff going on where you can go to this breathwork class and shake it up, and you now have clarity to start a new chapter maybe. But again, it's a tool. I wish I had a magic wand and waved it over people's head and said, you're now fine, you're perfect. But there's no magic wand. It's a lot of different types of tools that you're going to have in the shed that's going to help you get to this cohesive wholeness. And there's a lot of modalities out there. And I just got back from Dr. Joe Dispenza, and it's amazing to see how many people in my class of yoga that never heard of Dr. Joe. And they're going, well, how do I just go online and just look at one of his YouTube videos? But I went down to Cancun. There's 1,800 people down in Cancun. And his seminars, his retreats sell out in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So it's super hard to get into these retreats. And he's doing the exact same thing, but it's all through meditation. And one of the beautiful things about Dr. Joe is he brings the science to the woo-woo, and I call this woo-woo because, I was a football player, I was a, jock, I was in corporate world, and and all of a sudden you're seeing something. You're going inward and you're going, oh my God, what's happening here? You don't realize that this is real stuff, and I can't make this stuff up. And when I start seeing this, you got to start thinking about this veil that's going on in this other dimension or other force, other universe. Call it God, call it whatever you want. But, you more and more you see something like that, that there's an unknown force that is out there that I don't want to define it, call it whatever it is, but it exists.
So on the Joe Dispenza retreat, what would you say were your main takeaways that would help others listening?
So basically you're meditating. I meditated for like 35 hours during that 6 days. Each meditation was an hour and a half long. And he's doing, pineal gland meditations, walking meditations, 8th energy center meditations. And it was great, but the first day was tough, and I love what Dr. Joe says, just keep knocking on the door and something will break. Basically, the whole idea is, so where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So he talks about, and this is what he starts out with, is how do you start this meditation? Is if you think about your future, especially people that have these jobs that they had, you get up in the morning, you can blindfold yourself, exactly where to get your coffee in the morning. You go take your shower, you get into your car, you know exactly how to get to work. You know the people that you're going to see, the job that you're going to have. Everything is predictable. So he calls that the predictable future. It's that it's a known, okay? And it's one of the reasons why we love vacations so much, because there's an unknown. They say that 90% of your thoughts are the same every single day, okay? Because it's the same thoughts that you have every single day, and only 5% is different. Think about when you're a kid, when you went to recess. This is what Dr. Joe says, and it's so true. When you were in school and you're 6th grade and you're going on a field trip, God, you're ready to go on that field trip because you're getting out of that classroom. And it always brings a smile to everybody's faces when you think about it. Yeah, I remember those field trips. Same thing. We have this predictable future. So there's nothing there. And then talking about the past, that's already known because it's already in the past. And how many people do we know that are living this soap opera, this loop video of being triggered over and over again? And that is not a place to be. So he says the only place that there is an unknown. It's in the present moment. And in that present moment is where you're going to find creativity, and you're going to be able to figure out what is your next step. And it starts with meditation. And so if you consciously breathe, and he talks about energy centers, he never talks about chakras, which we do all the time in yoga. He never talks about Uddiyana Bandha, Mula Bandha, which we talk about all the time in yoga, because these are yoga terms, in Sanskrit that we brought to the Western culture. He talks about energy centers. He talks about squeezing your perineum, which is your Mula Bandha, which is your first chakra, sending it up, belly button to the back of your spine, which is your Uddiyana Bandha, going up to the sacral and solar plexus, all the way up to your heart chakra, which is your fourth energy center, and taking it back down. And it's this consciously breath right here. And that's where you just keep knocking at the door and something breaks. And for me, it's about being emotional. I'm definitely not an emotional guy from the start. I've always been in my head, but because of this yoga practice, I've gone into my heart. And I know when I start feeling emotions, that's when I know that I'm going places, that I'm cracking open that little egg and going inward. But that is the start in this whole meditation. And this is what I call flow state. This is what you do in yoga, because in yoga, we breathe in and out through our nose, and it's constant. And this is how we go inward. And it's the same thing that Dr. Joe was talking about in the beginning of all of his meditation practices.
As you think about that retreat, if you could only remember one thing from it, what story would you bring back with you?
Well, for me personally, it's just, incorporating meditation in my life. Basically at first I said, well, I get there super fast with breath work, and I don't do 30 minutes. Sometimes I can do 15 minutes of breath work, and I get there. But there's something to the yoga, something to the meditation that he's teaching that is beneficial as well, which is, and it just gives you, again, I talk about this clarity. So one of the things about Dr. Joe is he's doing a lot of science to the woo-woo. And he has a team of scientists, and he's going to be probably in the future, you'll start seeing some actual papers and journals that come out, scientific journals, which now makes him real. He's not the pseudoscientist that everybody is kind of labeling him at. But in that 1,800 people, 200 people were sick. And he's doing amazing research where people are wearing Garmins, and they're checking their health, and they're checking their guts. They're doing samples before and after microbiomes. They're filling out surveys. They're doing so much to try to get this information. But out of the 1,800 people, about 200 are sick. You're seeing people in wheelchairs there, and you're seeing people that are ill. And from what he was saying is about 60 different, he's testing 60 different diseases. What drug do you know will take away 60 diseases? So this meditation shows that there are benefits to it. It may not cure people. I don't know if they are cured. You'll wait to see these journals come out, these scientific research come out, but people are definitely feeling better. And whether it's placebo effect or not, who cares? They're seeing a dramatic change in people's lives for the better. So that's my biggest takeaway, that there is something here in this meditation. I'm going down. If you're in yoga, you're going down the right path. The only thing I can say to anybody that is not into yoga, try yoga, because that's down at your corner, and it doesn't have to be yoga room. Mm-hmm. Just get involved with it, and just be curious and keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. But I'm going down this path that I know that is the right path. There was a TED talk, and I forget the lady's name, but she talked about a stronger meaning of life. And this is all about this wholeness. And there are 4 areas in your life that you can do to strengthen your meaning of life. And the first one is purpose, is finding your purpose. There was a time that, I was raising my children. That was my main purpose. But guess what? My purpose changed because they grew up. They're adults now. My purpose is changing. We all have to have a purpose to create this one pillar of purpose, to create this stronger meaning of life. The second one is belonging, your tribe. Now, one of the beautiful things I love about the yoga room is that one of the reasons why I feel that we have 700 members and Honolulu Magazine just named us the best yoga studio is how people come in to the yoga room, the teachers, the members. There's a safety to this place and people around like-minded people. And it is a great, wonderful little tribe that we have there, but it's belonging. The third one is transcendence. And transcendence is basically something that is just higher than yourself, something that is just a little bit higher than your hustle and bustle. It can be religion, but it can be something that's spiritual. And that is the area that I feel I am growing in, and that pillar is strengthening. And that has to do with the yoga, meditation, and going inward. The last one is a different one, but it's so true. It's your story. The story that you tell yourself every single day, your little elevator pitch. What is your story? She gave an example about an athlete that was making a lot of money, and then he gets into an injury, and he's in a wheelchair. And at first, his story is like, I could have been somebody. I was somebody, and look at me now. Well, somebody calls him up and say, hey, can you talk to my high school kids? Next thing you know, he's traveling the whole country, talking to kids, motivating them to try to be a better person. And he's like, I found my purpose, And now he's saying, if it wasn't for this accident, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. It gives me chicken skin. But same thing is where I give my impact is to helping this community of Hawaii becoming more whole. There's so much negativity out there. And you can see it as this pendulum swing. And this pendulum goes this side, and you're seeing all the negativity. I don't even want to go into the politics. I don't want to go into all the stuff that's happening in this world. But I always feel that the pendulum will swing the opposite way on the other side. And when people start realizing that, hey, there's something more, I can find myself, I can be more happy, find more joy in my life. That is what I want to be able to be part of. And this whole constituency, this group towards this wholeness.
If you have breath work, you have plant medicine, you have yoga, you have the meditation and so on. Why not combine all of them into certain things?
Well, first of all, plant medicine is illegal.
Okay.
But you're right.
You can separate out the plant medicine.
There's a great documentary called How to Change Your Mind right on Netflix by Michael Pollan. You should watch it. It's amazing. They did 4 episodes. One's on acid, one's on MDMA, one's on mushrooms, and the other one's on peyote. Great episodes. And I would recommend anybody to watch that if they're thinking about plant medicine, And the whole thing about why the plant medicine is getting a lot of attention is because you do something that's fairly natural and you're getting benefits out of it. Again, going back to targeting this vortex of cohesive wholeness. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for this cohesive wholeness, which is stronger meaning of life, all that kind of stuff. And plant medicine is a tool. It will help you get there. So, and you're right, yoga is a tool, but walks in nature is a tool. Laughter is a tool. There's spending time with your children and really spending quality time with your children is a tool. How do you get more of that? And so that's really what we're trying to go for. Did I answer your question?
I was just wondering, because I went to the breathwork class and it was like a standalone class in a yoga studio.
Yes.
So I was wondering if things could potentiate it, then why not have some type of yoga piece and then the breathwork, or the breathwork first and whatever, and then you'd have the meditation, or is it just too intense, too much? Or,
that's good. There are some yoga studios that actually have meditation, and if you go onto YouTube, there's so many different types of meditations that you can do. But you're right. There maybe should be a meditation 101. There's more to come. I'm looking into some other modalities that I'm going to start that incorporate the meditation along with maybe a longer stretch.
On this one, it's tune in, turn toward. That's kind of the mantra of this thing that I'm doing with my daughter. And that's the whole deal, right? You tune in, you turn toward things. That's exactly what you're talking about with yoga, with the breath work. You end up in the same place, but different kind of entry point. So let's say it's on the breath work and you're moving into that space of, what we call non-ordinary reality. then in that shortened period of time, especially at the ending part where we'd normally do an integration of it, like what's going, how do we bring this back into reality and make sense of it and put it into action and so on, then that would be, to me, kind of the perfect timing for the meditative practice, even though the breath work is kind of meditative to an extent, you know what I mean?
Yoga is a moving meditation.
And then yoga brings you back into your body, right? Because a lot of times we're way out of our body. So it brings you back into your body. It incorporates the breath. We're focusing on, muscles and movements that we normally don't focus on. We notice, I'm breathing shallow. I need to take a deep breath. I'm breathing through my nose, or I'm breathing through my mouth. So that's why I was wondering, like, how would that be optimized into something? Because, you have the component pieces of it there. I think that could be kind of potentiated even more,
You're right. There, is, again, that magic wand we talked about. If I had a magic wand that I can wave over your head and you're like, boom, you're whole. And there isn't anything out there.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be so much on that. It's like there's a lot of individual, like, component pieces that I feel like maybe just my own wondering. Like,
what I'm trying to do is... There are obviously people that drank the Kool-Aid, that they know about it. They've been doing yoga for years. They understand the value of it, or understand even trying to be whole. And then there are people that, what I call, are not awake. They just don't know. But they're going through all these issues and problems, and they're trying to solve their problems externally, and they haven't looked inward. How do I get them? And this is part of advertising. How do I get them to say, here's an opportunity? Because in this world of yoga, actually in this world of fitness, we're minorities. There's so many people that don't take care of their bodies, and they don't. And there's so many people that are not mindful of what they put in their bodies. And I'm not promoting, veganism or anything like that. It's just being cognizant of the things that you put
So how do people become more mindful is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I think that is where the root seed is, getting people to say, Now, there has to be a motivation. You cannot do anything to a person that's not motivated. If they're not motivated, fine. And a lot of times what makes them motivated, because some big issue happens in their life. I went to the doctor and the reports came back. I got high blood pressure. I had a heart attack. Okay, that is when you do it. But usually that's when you're older. And you don't want to be in that situation. You got to think about preventative. You got to be thinking that 30 years before.
You know what I'm noticing too is that along with kind of this journey that you're in at this point, there's a lot of energy around, I need to spread this word. What's the story underlying that?
My motive to do that?
Yeah.
It just brings me joy. I guess it started when I was teaching spin classes. It's like after the class and you see smiles on people's faces and said, thank you so much. It starts with just that feeling alone. And you just want to give more and more and more. I'm in a place in my life where I've got the resources and the time and the energy to really start tuning into this area of wellness. And I want to continue to do that. It brings me joy. Mm-hmm. For somebody else, it's working on their boat every single weekend. For me, my 50-foot boat is the yoga room, I guess.
So that joy that it brings you, it feeds what in you?
Stronger meaning of life. It's purpose, it's belonging, it's transcendence, and the story that I tell about it, and it brings more people in. I think this is what it's all about.
You can tell me if this is wrong or so on, but there's a part of me telling me that there's like something like deeper and a bit more personal, or under that somewhere, like in a childhood instance of some sort or something, you know what I mean? And then that gets fed by this other stuff. It's like there's something kind of there that is just under. I'm hearing it. I'm hearing what you're saying.
What's the driving force?
Or I'm hearing the answer coming from your head is kind of what it's coming from. At least what it feels like to me. You know what I mean? And what happens is, like, that's a small portion of what's here in the room. There's a giant, like, spirit and heart going on that is like has a story under it that wants to kind of share. And that's what's pushing me into, like, hey, let this part go, let it express itself, and it's going to be something different. So that's why I keep asking
into that.
Yeah. I want to know what your heart and gut is responding on this one.
I suppose what it comes down to is just, I really want to see people whole. And there's something about when somebody comes up to you and says, hey, Eric, can I talk to you about what I experienced in my breathwork? And I'm going to make time for them. I want to make time for them. And I want to see if you can help them in any way, or you can direct them and point them in the right direction, or open some doors that they never knew existed so that they can say, I never thought about that. I'm 60 years old. I got some wisdom. I got some life experiences. And if I can help share and point somebody in the right direction so that they're in a better state, I'll do it.
You want to see them whole.
Yeah.
So I think my question then is, which part of you needs to be whole? When I see others whole, the part of me that needs the attention to be whole is when you finish that.
It's an exhale. It's like, yeah, I can help people. I can be this conduit and I can help people. And again, it gives me more energy to be able to do it again. That's the answer. I mean, I'm looking at my past. I know that, I can go back and I can say, okay, I got some abandonment issues and things like that in my life. My issue with Steph and having someone that have cancer for 9 years caused a lot of issues. I made peace with that. I've kind of moved on with that. I've definitely, looked at that big in the face, went to therapy about that and all that kind of stuff. I spent a lot of time on that. But now, I'm in a place where, I don't want to just play golf every single day. I want to be able to make an impact, and the impact that I want to see, not for whatever somebody else wants. And this is it.
The impact that you want to see in someone else, or the impact that, what does that mean?
We are only on this earth for a very short time. And, let's just say that I have another decade of really providing something to give back to this community. This is what I can do. This is just my way. Mm-hmm. You're not going to probably see me go out and help feed the homeless and things like that. I'm probably not going to do that, but I can do this. And I know there's a number of people out there that are looking for that, and I can do it.
I think what it brings to my mind then is that there's a saying, it's like the longest journey is from your head to your heart.
12 inches.
Right? But then as you move through that, I call it like 5 H's. It goes head to heart, and then goes heart to your history. And then from your history, it goes to healing. And then healing, it goes to like hero. Right? So the movement between head and heart is typically the one that when you move into the heart and then things start to express, then a lot of times it comes right back to the head. Right? Because it's like, oh, it's too much. I got to make stars around it and analyze it. The thing that has been super interesting and to me that I've been curious on in watching you and your YouTube stuff, or the Facebook things and so on, is there's brief points where you will capture it and you move from your head into your heart. And on those ones are really, really captivating and interesting to me. Not that the other stuff is not, because obviously, you're really smart and bright and articulate and, you handsome guy, right?
Thank you.
I mean, like I showed a picture to someone, like, wow, look at this guy, he's ripped. And it's like, oh, that's the class you're going to? I was like, yeah, I don't look like that. But, you know what I mean? So that's, I don't know. It's in the container already. I feel it. So it's like, that's what I'm trying to get to know a little bit better. I'm just trying to see it a little bit better.
The driving force.
Or just what's coming out of the heart area. Because what happens is, there's a saying, it's like perception is projection, right? So it's like what's going on inside of me, I'm going to project externally and then use that as my mirror to kind of try to more or less fix or resolve what's going on inside. So if you think about it in that context, then there's a super strong desire in you to, like, I want to help, because I have a same kind of one.
You do.
I want to help. I see this pain in the other person, but I can fix this, you know, like I can do it. So what is it in you, or what that is the driving piece of that? Not so much the strategy, but like, what is the origin piece? Because what ends up happening is by helping externally, we're more or less mirroring what needs to happen kind of internally. That's what you see in your plant medicine journeys, right? In the breath work and the meditation, it's no longer like turning away and tuning out. It's being able to tune in and turn toward it in a safe space that can be held, which is what we needed initially, right?
Well, they say in order to help somebody, you need to be Pono. And there's no question, there's times in my life where I was not Pono. I was not Pono. I wasn't, I need to just focus on me and doing what I need to do.
What's your definition of Pono?
Just be right. Mm-hmm. And be right is like wholeness. I mean, that's how I see it.
When you define right, though, like, you're not talking about right and wrong, or are you?
No, I'm talking about just being right. You're just feeling
like complete.
And now that I feel I'm in a place where I can give, I have the time, and I want to have more time. I want to travel a little bit more, but like I have the time and I can do this. Mm-hmm. And if I'm going to do this, then I'm going to make sure that I have the knowledge to be able to provide that.
So last week was my father's funeral, right? We went through from 2014 till basically February of this last year. My father had cancer, and we were, dealing with all of that. And, I was helping as a caregiver, and it, many times where we look like, oh, he's going to die, and he doesn't. It sounded like you went through something. I can't say it's similar or so on, but your own. And that's the age group that we're in, right? The age group that we're in, parents, in particular, getting older, or if they haven't passed, we're becoming caregivers and so on. So like, can you share into like what the experience was? I mean, I don't want to bring up like the most painful thing for you, but it's like, something that would be helpful in navigating that. So imagine that you're talking with people that, are going through this right now, right? Parents are getting older. They may be sick. They may have just passed away, or somebody really close. Last year I had 8 friends die, like most of my age,
I look at that. And again, we talked about that as like some of these people, I mean, things happen, my wife, Steph, she got leukemia.
My dad, leukemia.
Okay. I
mean, ALL.
Okay. She had CLL, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, that actually turned into a lymphoma. But like, here she was pretty healthy. She ate well. She didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't do any of that. And all of a sudden, boom. And then you start thinking, why? What's happening here? You can kind of think about all these different theories of why. Bottom line, you don't know in the end. But the fact that she does, and when she does, you just got to do. You got to go into this DEFCON 5 mode, just like you did with your father. And you're just going to have to do to make sure everything is good. Just make sure he's happy and he's in this best state as possible. Then you have to deal with it. A lot of people don't realize the emotional stress that goes on to the people that are taking care of that person that got sick.
Oh, it's the hardest thing, period. This is the hardest job you ever will do.
Nobody talks about that.
Yeah.
But for me, it's about thinking about whenever somebody passes, you got to think about your life expectancy. And I got this on a Joe Rogan thing. It's like somebody was talking. I think it was a guy that owned the 5-hour energy drink. He says, we all have 2 lives. Confucius said, we all have 2 lives. And the second life begins when you realize you only have one, and I love that. There was another little story that I got about a man meets an angel, and the angel says, you want to know when you want to die? He goes, I don't want to know when I want to die, but can you come and tell me? And can you tell me before? And so he lives his life, and the angel comes down and says, you're going to die tomorrow. Because I told you to give me a sign. Tell me when you're going to. I did. Every single time when your parents passed away, when your friends passed away, those are all signs that your life is finite. And you got to look at it. If you're going to look at a bird's eye view, you're going to know that, you're not going to be around forever. I think people in their 20s, they think they're going to be around forever. They don't think about death and things like that. But when you do take a good look at death and you saying, this is my life, I got good 30 years left, maybe, you know, of being able to be mobile and walking around. What am I going to do with it? You're only on this earth for a short time. What are you going to do? You're feeling all of these feelings. You're feeling all these emotions. Now what are you going to do with it? And can you be able to do the things that you want to do? And everybody has a different, what do I want to do? The question is can you find it? And if you can find it, then you have more joy and more happiness in your life.
Could you share like maybe one of the times that it was tough for you and what you did to kind of make it through that?
Steph was sick for 9 years from the day that she got diagnosed. She probably had it 2 years before she got diagnosed because it put a cricket in our relationship because she was always tired. She never wanted to do anything. And when we first met, we're doing things left and right. I mean, we're active people. And all of a sudden, she doesn't want to do anything. And I remember, you know, it put a thorn in our relationship to the point where we had to see therapy about this, like, what's going on? And like, for example, we bought a condo and it's like, let's go and DIY and HGTV and fix this place up because I don't have the energy for that. I go, what do you mean? Come on, let's go. And I ended up having to do it myself, and that wasn't fun. I mean, granted, we did rent it out, and I had to get people to help me out and fix it up. But later on, I realized that she had cancer. And that started this whole, you know, snowball. And which also means that being intimate sexually was not in the picture. And I probably got to year 7 and got to a point where I can't do this. I'm a, you know, healthy young man. Don't get me wrong. I loved her to death, but she was also a born again Christian, which she wasn't when we married. She wasn't a born again Christian, but some things come with someone that's a born again Christian, and she did not approve of me ever going out. And I understand, completely understand. But at the same time, I mean, I did some things that I'm not happy about. And I wish that were different. You know, again, when she passed away, everything came together and there was a lot of forgiveness. There was a lot of love and all that kind of stuff. But that was a hard time where you're doing what your body wants to do, what is urging to do. But at the same time, you have morals and you want to be able to do the right thing. And I think I got in after 9 years of being in cancer. I got to year 7 and it's just like, it broke. Couldn't do it. And I probably have to live with that. I'll have to live with that in whatever I mean possible, the shame or the guilt or something like that for the rest of my life. But like I said, that's one of the reasons why I went down to try to see her again and talk to her. And we've come full circle and we're good now. But that was a tough time in my life. And if I was in the same situation as today, would I do anything differently? I can't tell you if I could. Mm-hmm. You know, I couldn't say if I could do that. You know, we never divorced, and you know, we married and we stayed husband wife till the end. But yeah, there were some things that I'm not proud about.
On those ones, have you been able to forgive yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I think so.
Not yes. Cognitively. The parts that are holding the pain, the guilt, the shame that you mentioned, and so on. Are you able to forgive those parts?
Yes. To the best of my knowledge, yes. But they're scars. And sometimes if you pick out a scar, they're going to bleed again and you're going to have to let it heal again, you know. But yes, I've been able to love again, and that's good because I know I loved her, you know, more than anything, you know, at the time.
In our system, right, we have these parts of us when something traumatic happens. So trauma is not what happens like to us. That's traumatic, right? It's what happens in us as a result of what happens to us, right? Like in a situation like that, your wife, she's passed, you know, the situation is gone. but there's certain pieces of it that get stuck and live on, and we have to protect around it, because when they come up, it's painful, and our protective parts need to jump in, whether they're going to manage it and make sure where everything's okay and I'm handsome and I got all these things going on, or whether it's I got a drink right now or something, you know what I mean, or whatever those pieces may be. And what happens is, this is where it goes in the breath work or in the plant medicines or any of that, even in the therapy, if you can get to that area, which is, can we witness the pain of those parts, what they needed in the time? Because in that time that you're going through all of this, we need someone to be able to hold space and to be able to let us express what's really there without judgment, because it's so hard. So can it just be okay? And that's what those parts really need. Is, can it be okay before they can really even just release?
These are the tools that we were talking about earlier to create this wholeness. But what's interesting is, you know, some of these things that happened in the past, you've put so many bricks to be able to move forward in life, and you don't need those bricks anymore.
Yeah.
But there's comfort inside that.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. And now all of a sudden it's like, how do you dismantle it? How do you take them down? And so how do you be vulnerable to be okay with not having this wall up?
I have a story for that. Earlier in the year, I had done a plant medicine journey. So ayahuasca. This snake on here is the boa from ayahuasca. So the second night was really, really like somatic. Everything was in the body. And at the tail end of it, when we're starting to come out, but not really, because you know how it goes, right? You're still in there for kind of a long time. A shaman shared with us a really, really powerful story that brought it all kind of together. And what he shared, and this is my rendition, so it's not going to be exact, but he talked about a village in Peru. And a young boy came out of his teepee, went across the field to the arroyo, where he saw an old man holding a knife, crying in the river. And the boy was curious, so he went to the man and he said, "Old man, well, what's wrong? What's going on?" And the man looked at him and he said, "Young boy, I hold this knife for as long as I can remember. I use it for protection, but every time I use it, it hurts me, it cuts me, and everyone I love. But I can't let it go." The boy says, "Well, why can't you let it go?" And he says, "Because I may need it for the future." And the boy thought about it and he said, "Okay." And before he even knew what was going on, the boy grabs the knife from the man, takes it, and runs back home. And the man realizes he doesn't have this knife anymore. He feels the burden relieved. He moves on. Fast forward 70 years, right? A young girl named Ayahuasca comes across the field to the river, where she sees that boy who's now an old man holding the knife, crying in the river. And she asks him, "Old man, why are you crying? What's wrong?" And he says, "I've had this knife for as long as I can remember. I hold it for protection. And every time I use it, it cuts me and it cuts everyone I know. It causes so much pain, but I can't leave this knife." She says, "Why can't you leave it?" She said, "Because I may need it for the future." And the girl thought about it and she said, "I don't know if I can do anything about this, but come back to my village and talk to my grandmother. My grandmother may be able to help you." So she takes the man there to meet the grandmother. And grandmother looks at the young girl, looks at the man and says, "Granddaughter, you did the right thing. This is not your burden. You go meet with your family and eat." So she leaves. She tells the man what's going on. And he tells her, "I've had this knife as long as I've lived. I can't let it go. When I use it, it cuts me and everyone around me. It causes so much pain." And grandmother tells him, "I can't take that knife from you. I'm not going to do that. But what I'll do is I'll put my hands under here. And when you're ready, you let it go and I will catch it." And that man, because she was holding the space, took everything that he could. And when he let it go, before it hit her hand, it turned to light and it went everywhere. So the piece in that story is that all of these burdens that we hold, that we think we need, the protections that we think we need, when we release them, it turns to light and it goes everywhere. And that's the story that was left with me during that ceremony.
That's a great story.
Yeah. Because it's not going to hurt anybody else. It's okay. You know?
But you're right. But we hide behind it because we've been hiding them behind these little walls for so long, and we're just comfortable there. That's why we don't want to let go of that knife.
Yep.
And, you know, I mean, once we get to the point that this is not serving me and this is the real root of the problem, we can let go of these bricks and be vulnerable. And that's the hard thing. Now, all of a sudden, I'm exposed. What are people going to say? And you're going to find out that it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I talk about consciousness a lot. You know, you ever see a child 5 years and under, 6 years and under in a supermarket? That child wants something. Mom says no. That child's going to do a temper tantrum, start screaming and yelling at the top of their lungs because they don't care. They want something, and they don't care if anybody else is hearing them scream and ruining their time and, you know, agitating them. And that happens. Then you have the old person. You hear about the angry old man or the Karen that just sharing all their negativity. They let go of something. They don't have it. They don't. But those ages in between, we end up becoming conforming, and we have to be a certain way because our community says we have to be a certain way. And we create these layers and layers and layers. So how do we let go? And that's the hard part. How do we unlearn?
Are you asking me that one?
Yeah.
I have an answer for that.
I would love to hear you, Eric.
Okay. If you're talking about the young child that is throwing a tantrum, the frustration is shown as a need that's being unmet.
Sure.
This child has a need of some sort.
Sure.
Could be expressing it through needing a toy or so on, but realistically, it's most likely I need my mother's love or something along that lines, and I'm not getting it, so I'm going to protest, and that's how it's expressed, right, in that protest. So the intention is I would like my mother's love, and the impact is I'm throwing a tantrum and I'm going to get excluded and I'm going to cause the problem that is causing me to not feel that, right? When that child now cannot express themselves and they're shamed or gaslighted or so on to hold it in, like just shut up or so on, right? That's stuck, and that's stuck in time.
Right.
So the belief then becomes extreme and the emotion becomes extreme.
Sure.
And the emotion and belief is something's wrong with me. I'm defective. This is shame. My bad parts are being witnessed. And that part of us gets lodged inside. It's stuck in time, and it's 6 years old, and it's 6, and it stays 6. And every time that it's trying to resolve, it's trying to express itself, it comes up in our system, and our system feels it the exact same way that we did at 6 years old. And then we want to shut it down in whatever possible way we can because it's too painful. The process never finishes. That Karen, or whatever you want to call it, on the other end, is getting lit up because this 6-year-old part is going live. And then the protective pieces around it is to project and spat, whatever it might be. That's what's going on. So it's still the 6-year-old part. All the stuff in the middle is still trying to protect against the 6-year-old part. So what happens here is that once our protective system is cool with us to be able to go to the 6-year-old part and provide it what it actually needs, which is to be witnessed, to be seen, heard, validated, empathized with, retrieved at a point, right? Bring it into the present. It's like a soul retrieval, right? Updated on, hey, you're not in the past any longer. You're not unsafe any longer. And this is all okay. And once this part right here feels like it's got everything off its chest, you got it. And it can release that burden, that feeling of shame, because it's not shame. It holds shame. It's not the burden. It holds the burden. Then when that gets released, that part now springs back into its fun-loving self, and there's no protection needed any longer. That's what happens a lot of times in the psychedelic journeys, or in deep meditations, or in the proper types of therapy, is that we can release that because it can be witnessed from an adult perspective,
Sure.
as opposed to a child
Sure.
perspective.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times stuff that's being held in is just compiled on each other.
Right.
And let's say like in your situation, if you really went through it a bit, there's probably, and I don't know, I would guess, this is my hunch, is that there's a bunch more that leads back, and it's all in one big bucket. So it becomes really heavy, right? When you get to the root, the earliest one, and that goes, then it's like the toilet just got unclogged.
Exactly.
And the drain got unclogged. It's all going. Right. And then now everything is only what it is at that time, and not everything, the 8,500 things that happened prior.
I love that.
Yeah.
That was good. I was just trying to point out that, a child under 6 years old doesn't care about their surroundings, but you take a 8-year-old, that 8-year-old is not going to probably cry in there, because now that 8-year-old has consciousness, aware of everything around them, and they're going to try to get whatever they want from their mother in a different way other than crying and disturbing.
Yeah, the strategies will change.
Correct.
But the need will be the same.
A need will be always the same. Yes.
The need will be the same.
Yes.
But the strategy may change, may not. Yeah.
But just like you said, think about all the issues that come up as a child or going into prepubescent and into adulthood. There's so many layers and upon layers and upon layers. You don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg. And then,
so you get to the original one.
Yeah, until you get to the original one. Yeah.
Your system will tell you what it is.
Yeah. And again, finding tools. Therapy is a tool. Use it. There's great things in therapy. There even could be good things in medication too. I'm not saying that, I'm not a proponent to that. I'm just saying there's just keep trying, just to keep out there. And I talk about that person that's motivated. Can't do anything for someone that's not motivated. If you're motivated to say, I need to find the source, I need to find what's out there, you'll find it.
When you think about that though, with the motivation, if you dig deep, do you find that your motivations come more from love these days or from fear?
Well, I think the big question is, I remember asking this to somebody else, is, can you teach drive? Is the drive always have to be there automatically, or can you teach drive? Can you motivate somebody?
I can easily motivate someone. You light their world on fire and they now become motivated, right? Like that, but that intention doesn't match the impact, right?
But to me, there's always something there. If somebody is not motivated to do something, they're not going to do it.
So that motivation piece in there. So I think what I'm getting to on this is like, people say you want to follow your passion, right? And the root of passion is suffering. So that's why it's passion of the Christ. It's suffering. Mm-hmm. So you're like, I'm going to find my passion. You look at my passion is social justice. My passion is, and a lot of times that's going to be because the world was not providing me social justice. So now it caused me pain, and now I'm passionate about that. In our age, where we're at the latter portion of where we're actually productive, a lot of times we're looking at how do we move from that, right? Mm-hmm. That intense, like I got to move away from pain type of energy as a motivation to love, which is the purpose and pulling and so on. There's a switch in here that not everybody can make. So that's the distinction that I'm asking.
We haven't talked about that, but that's huge.
Yeah, which is, there's an ebb and flow, right? Which is becomes like, I got to help this person because I'm not, I'm feeling it my own, right? There's a difference in that movement versus the purpose and the calling and so on, which is, there's a different energy around it. It's not as I have to, you know what I mean? That one, which is harder to stay in a lot of times, is it's just okay. Like, can you just be? You know what I mean? However that is.
But the actions that we do can bring the conclusion or bring the joy. So you have to take the steps. It's funny. Well, in our age, I've talked to a number of people that said, I'm at the point where I want to retire and I don't know what to do.
Yep.
And
because their identity is fully into their work.
Into that.
It's
right?
It's like, hey, who are you? I'm a lawyer. Your vocation is lawyer.
Who are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is when the first time when they don't have this, because that's defined, that's their story.
Yep.
How is
their identity?
It's the identity. How their story is going to change. And again, stronger meaning of life. What are you going to do from there? Okay. And what are the steps that I got to take to find this joy this retirement that I'm supposed to be. Well, if you're a guy that worked all the time and you never traveled, chances of you traveling and finding that joy, it's not going to be there because you never really traveled. There are people that have this such desire to travel, and they've been doing it all their lives. But how do you take someone that says, I'm at the end of this career, what am I going to do? And again, diving down, what would you say to someone that has...
I'd say it right here. Exact sit in peace. Tune in, turn toward, right? The only way out is through.
Yeah.
And external is just a projection of what's going on internally. If I feel that the world's dangerous, all I see is danger, right? If I feel that the world is safe and beautiful, all I see is safe and beauty.
I always say, hostile people live in a hostile world.
Yeah.
Loving people live in a loving world. It's the same world.
Hurt people hurt others. Like, it's internal first and then external. So the lack of clarity in terms of what am I going to do comes from a lack of clarity of what am I being, right? So you have like be, do, and have, right? We're not a human doer. We're a human being. But we act as human doers most of the time, right? So it's really being. So at that point, I help people in this kind of transition a lot because, well, not necessarily to retirement, but within their career. And there's 3 stages that are really apparent. One is execution. We're going to crank it out. We're, doing stuff, right? Then you have direction, which is like, where are we actually going? Like, what's the objective? Right. What's the why, right? In there, which they talk about. But what they don't talk about is the preliminary step before that too, which is healing. Because your why changes when you're moving through pain to get away from pain versus moving toward purpose. The why changes. The why changes if certain unresolved childhood traumas are not resolved. The why's changed. And what happens is, if you can get the healing piece done, then the direction changes. And when that becomes very clear, then execution, for the most part, for people who are pretty capable, takes care of itself.
Sure. Sure. But taking that initial step, where should I step? That's the most important step.
And that's where I think if we even circle back to that, that's where communities like you offer come into play. Yeah. Because you can enter in many different ways. They call it like top down or bottom up, right? Top down is I enter through my head into my body, which is like I can do psychotherapy or so on, right? We're talking through it and trying to move into the body. And body up modalities are somatic through the body, breathwork, yoga, where it's actually going through the body first and then actually entering into that middle ground inner space, right? So it's to each his own.
Well, and
what
sometimes
works best.
Just focusing on that one area to straighten that arrow, to find that joy, there's a ripple effect. And every other thing in your life starts to be cohesive, but it has to start in one spot. And it's just a matter of just being motivated. Like I've asked people, hey, check out my breathwork. They don't come. It's okay. They'll come when they're ready. Maybe this is not the time for them to come, but there's other people out there that are looking for answers, and they're coming and they're taking and I love the fact that they just show up. And I say this in my yoga class, at the end of every yoga class, the hardest part about yoga or anything in life is just to show up.
Yeah.
But once you show up, that's when things start to happen and things start to change, and good things will happen if it's done on a positive level.
And I think on that too, what I find is the thing to get people over the hump, at least for myself, is initially pain. It's pain. We will spend way more effort to get out of pain and on painkillers than we will on vitamins and supplements and things like that, which people still spend money on. But to get out of pain, that's number one. That's the driver. So that's why when there are lessons that are not being heeded or signals that are being sent and not being received by the universe, then it gets louder and louder, and we end up getting voluntold.
Well, that's when we make shifts, is when we have those peaks, right?
You make the shifts when you talking about the peak in pain?
Yeah. When you're feeling that, like, okay, now something has to happen. I got to really move. Yeah. But it'd be good to make that move before it happens. And that's what we call preventative. that is like, this is good for me. So if you can just say that this is good for me because it just makes my body feel good, it gets me into shape, other things will happen. And again, it's the persistence, you know?
Well, your body is part of your mind too. I mean, like, it's all
for sure
one. I mean, you can make each of them sick from the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, you know, you saw that clearly. I mean, I would, like, when my father initially got sick and my wife then got sick, I mean, it's like the body pain you get from that kind of stuff is intense.
And the cathexis, or the fact that you feel their pain because of your love for them. And you're just like, you can feel that. It's kind of like when your kid falls on the street and scrapes his knee, you probably feel that pain.
Well, that too. And have you ever seen that, have you ever heard of mirror neurons?
Sure.
Right? Mirror neurons, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where your feelings fire and mine will fire at the same
time.
Kind of time. Did you see that experiment they did with the monkeys? Right? So they took monkeys, and what they were doing is they were eating peanuts, and they had EEGs on their head to measure the brain activity of what's going on. So they would eat the peanuts and then they would fire, right? So then they took a break, and the guy or woman, I don't know who, the researcher was doing their thing on the side. Someone else came in the room, and they saw peanuts. And they're like, oh, peanuts. And so they went and started eating the peanuts. And when they started doing that, the monkey's brain started firing again. Yeah. Same exact way.
Sure.
So what happens is we tend to kind of feel each other. It's the same kind of resonance as when you take a tuning fork and you hit it here, and it's the same note
frequency
over here.
Yep.
It'll go, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a highly sensitive person, HSP? So HSP is kind of like I don't know if it's a designation or so on, but there's, according to the person who wrote that book and so on, there's like 20-something% of the population are HSP. What that means is like a highly sensitive person will feel at a much higher intensity than others will. Like how, you know, like how some people, exactly, right? So the story, and I kind of tell this a lot, but it's like, I don't go to concerts, but I went to one because my son's friends were doing it, and it was like an enclosed, and it was so loud. I noticed my chest was like boom, 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 boom. I was like, what the heck is going on around here? And then I noticed that the drum that was pounding was so loud, it was resonating in my chest. But if I didn't realize that the drum was resonating in my chest, I would have felt like, holy crap, I'm having a heart attack. I better go to the hospital because I'm having problems. All the story would run, and I'd have a reaction to this story that I just ran, which was based on imperfect information.
Yeah,
that's the exact same kind of thing that happens when we're not cognizant of what we're actually feeling and if it's ours. And a highly sensitive person will feel it intensely. So especially in roles like kind of like what you're doing, therapy roles, HR, a lot of executives actually have that, I noticed. And they've learned either how to shut it down or so on. They've kind of pushed it away.
There's so many stories that we're told as a young child of how it's supposed to be.
Or you're too much, right?
But as you get older, you're unlearning.
Yeah.
You're unlearning things that you were taught, and that's hard.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the hardest. To unlearn. It's way easier to learn than
to unlearn.
Yeah.
Of course. But that's where you're going to find joy. When you realize that this hasn't been serving me, looking at this way, and now all of a sudden you have to unlearn something. And
I think that, because your persona nowadays is quite a bit different from when we had first met, but your energy is the same, right? Your look is different. You got the longer hair,
it's a form of letting go.
All of that piece, right? And before it was the holding the, I'm a professional, whatever kind of image, and I understand that completely. It's just if something was about your energy that I wanted to experience in a I guess more intimate kind of way, and so I appreciate you sharing yourself with me. And
like I said, I shared something that is very, very close to me that I have never shared before. But looking back in time, it's not going to be something that happened in business that was a problem and I was able to solve it. It's going to be something that has to do with my life and my heart and the pulls that I had with my heart and what I had to deal with. And like I said, if I had to go and live that over again, how would I have done anything differently? I don't know.
Can you, or were you willing to share a story that can help me to understand who your wife really was at her best? You know what I mean? At something that's meaningful to you.
She had a lot of the things that I had. I remember when I first opened up the ad agency, I had the Lincoln Mercury account for Hawaii, and they come up with a new car, and she had her own public relations company, but because we had kids, she just kind of let that fold, and she was raising the children. And she says, I can do some stuff on the side. And I remember her saying, well, Lincoln just came out with a new car. I don't want to do that. She did it, and then we ended up getting the blood bank of Hawaii, which is people that donate blood to help save lives. And I gave her this PR project to do for the blood bank, and she just fell in love with this. And just for the fact that it's just saving lives, all of a sudden it was like night and day of what she just turned on. And this was beautiful. I mean, I ended up losing her working for me. She ended up going to the blood bank, and that's where her career was, working at the blood bank for a number of years until she stopped. So that's, Steph was a beautiful woman. Steph was such a giving person in so many different ways. And for so many years, we loved each other dearly. And I can think of so many different times in our lives, especially when I was on ayahuasca, those times that were just so special. But there was a givingness to her of that saving lives and just giving. Just a giver.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's awesome. I can feel her spirit now.
Yeah. Thank you.
So what else would you like to say, or what did we miss, or anything you wanted to express?
The only thing that I want to go back to that pendulum is that, getting into this person that is listening to this is continue to look for tools. That's the most important thing. There's a lot of them out there, and you're going to try something that's not going to work for you. But continue to try, because there's something out there that will. And then you're going to have a backpack of tools that that will work. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be able to use them, all of them, to get into this wholeness. And I think that's the big picture of what we're doing. If they're listening here, continue to look, because they're out there. Don't think that, I've tried them all. You didn't. There's so many out there.
Mm-hmm. I think I would add something to that, in that there's so many times where we feel alone. Even if we're in a crowded room.
Crowd loneliness.
We can feel alone.
Mm-hmm.
And we're never alone. Once we can build that relationship internally with ourselves, and we can sit there and be comfortable with ourselves, you're never alone.
Never alone. Especially as your kids grow up and they leave the house, your career winds down, you're going to be hanging out with a lot more of yourself than you've ever realized. You got to like yourself.
Yeah.
And you should like yourself. And again, there are tools out there to show how beautiful and wonderful you are.
There's a lot, actually.
A lot.
Yeah. Okay, well, I want to acknowledge you, Eric, for the work that you're doing, the lives you're touching, and your ability to be vulnerable.
Thank you. Same with you.
Thank you.
Wow. Beautiful. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you resonate with Greater Good Radio, please join our community at www.greatergoodradio.com, where you can get access to exclusive content and offerings. Hope to see you soon.